start with David. David, have you got any news for us this week?
No, thank you.
Okay, right. Who's next? Right, let's get on with it. Right, the usual thing. Somebody's got to say something. So, right, okay, right. Oh God, I'll get names right in a minute. We will next do Trina.
They found an old wooden ship on the beach at Sunday in Orkney, and they think the sand has been washed away, which has revealed it, but it's getting into pieces now, so they're bringing it on shore to date it.
When was it? When was this actually reported?
It was a few days.
Is this new? Sorry, is this new news? You know,
well, the fact it's breaking up is new because they didn't expect it to. The thing that amused me, it had 2 futtocks, and I always thought that was a made-up word.
It had 2 futtocks.
Yes, 2 of them.
Explain to the rest of us what a futtock is.
No idea. It just made me laugh.
I thought you were an expert on futtocks.
It's long, so I don't know how that gets in. It's wooden. It's a wooden beam, isn't it? Is it? Don't know.
I don't think it. I think it's like a triangular curved shaped piece that goes in the corners.
Right.
But I'm not entirely sure. I will check. But I think that's what the futtock is. But...
Okay.
All right.
So you would need 2, whatever it was. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Fair enough.
One for each side, whether it's supporting or whatever. If it's supporting a squared off transom, it will be in the corner, or it's supporting a plank, the decking, or something going across the top. I'm sure that's what a futtock is, but I'll check.
Yeah, I think you should.
The middle timbers of the ship's frame between the floor and the top timbers, apparently.
Well, that's what a futtock is.
That means.
Yeah. I think that's what that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't make it up. Right. Okay. Who's next now? We will now do Peter.
Nothing from me. No.
Okay. Fair enough. And who else? Who else we got left? Anne, I need you to use up a bit of time a minute. So
well, I don't know anything. I was watching a program today about the Iceman, but I say it didn't. I thought it was a bit rambling. I enjoy your lectures better. It was a bit rambling, but and as I say, it didn't say anything we didn't already know. Although it had said something about it being new, but I couldn't see anything that was new in it that we hadn't heard before.
Okay. All right. Okay then. Well, it's going to be a quieter one tonight, and we're probably not going to be as long on as normal, simply because Margaret won't be doing any talking, which is a bit of a shame, and there's no entertainment from Roger either, so that's a bit of a shame as well. So okay. So let's crack on with the first image.
Hang on, futtocks. I found out what futtocks are.
Oh yeah, right.
They're not what I thought they were. They're if you think of a keel going between my hands like that, the kind of this bit of the ribs going up are called futtocks.
Oh,
not the top bits and not the bottom bits, but the middle bits going round like that. So it's the kind of the ribs that go up like that, the bottom parts of them. That's the futtocks.
Thank you.
So
you didn't ask me what I got any news.
Hang on a minute. I want to interrupt a minute, right? I want to interrupt. In other words, a futtock is a rib.
It's part of it, not the entire bit, just the lower section of it. I didn't know that the ribs or the frames were split into bits, but it is. So you get first, second, and third futtocks when it's cut into sections, as in rather than a steamed one.
Right. So right. Okay. So in other words, a rib is divided into 3 or 4 footocks.
It can be, yes. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay.
Depends,
I'm so
depends on
yeah.
the
Go on.
period. Yeah. So
Right. Okay. So, let me just get this right. So this ship had right. Surviving from this ship is a futtock on the starboard and the port side. Is it? Or 2 have survived on the port side, or 2 or whatever. Yeah, that's fine.
Two. Just
That
this.
that'll do. That'll do. Right. As nobody else has got any news. Oh yeah, Andy, I forgot you haven't told us.
yeah, I had a moment of happiness. I discovered the back catalogue of Time Team on 4's online service.
Oh, wow.
Oh
It's
wow.
not all of them because there's about 11 series there, and some of them only got 3 or 4 episodes in. And I'm sure the earlier ones had more than that, but I might be wrong. But it's very funny watching the older ones and how different they are to the later ones that we remember. But yeah, happiness.
To be honest with you, yeah, Time Team went through a few different phases. I think the last phase, the last season wasn't brilliant, but that's because Phil Arden had no
Mick.
Nick
Yeah.
Aston had passed away, hadn't he, or
Yeah.
something?
Yeah.
And
He's
Yeah.
very much more prominent in the earlier ones than I'd remembered, and very good as well. So
yeah, that's right. As he was getting late, as he's getting later on, he was getting more frailer, wasn't he? So
yeah, yeah,
oh right, that's brilliant. And don't forget the new Time Team series on YouTube, which you can watch. And if you're a member of Patreon, which is on YouTube, then you get to watch all the episodes, live. So that's how they fund it anyway. So they've managed to get nearly 10,000 people to pay whatever it is on Patreon, which they're able to film about 3 or 4 episodes a year now. And the more people who join Patreon, there's got more money and sponsorship. And I do believe that Sir Tony Robinson is actually doing 1 or 2 of the Time Teams now as well. So
all right. Have you seen any? Do you know if they're any good?
confession is I haven't eaten a whole one. No, I haven't watched any. Um and it's probably because I remember, like you, Andy, when Time Team was Time Team, because
Yeah,
I can remember that when I was living in Bonvilleston in the countryside from about 2001 to about 2005, we had we had our own active archaeological excavation ourselves, and I can remember that we would that the excavation used to be on the Sunday, so I'd never see Time Team on a Sunday ever because I was excavating. So I would we would then or we would manage to get back in the winter months, and it was like on at 9 o'clock or something like that. And then we would and then on the Monday, um, we would ship the children off out the house and whatever, and we used to be able to watch it on S4C, and and yeah, we used to watch Time Team. I remember that. It used to be good. So anyway, so oh right, yes, I've got to make that announcement. So I should have said it last week. Andy already knows, is that the £50 is now due for oh god, I forget where I am, March and April. So if you could get the your £50 over, folks, as soon as you can, at least I'll be able to pay some bills like Zoom and so on. So don't forget, the £50 is now due for the classes, and try and get that over as soon as possible. And sorry that you had that little mishap, Andy. So right, so anyway, thanks for your continued support. We're going to crack on. So right, here we go. I'm just trying to get me up on the screen. So good. So I've realised that we've got quite a long way to go in the Bronze Age in many places. And there's some unanswered questions still, i.e. Flag Fen, and we've got the Mold Cape as well. And I'm having to buy in the material for that. So I'm getting some stuff. I'm getting some stuff in from Flag Fen, and I'm getting I'm getting some stuff in from the Mould Cape, and naturally, when you're teaching these types of classes, there is no way that you can find everything on the internet, and it's becoming more and more apparent that there's not enough material on the internet to do proper research. So hence why you've got to go back to books and so on, which is fair enough because things on the internet can be naturally wrong in many times when you're actually doing that level of research. So today what we're going to do, I've got a list of information in front of me which is coming up, and what the list of information is, I asked myself a question, and it said, why do we find coin hoards in the Bronze Age? Right? Not coin hoards, start again. Why do we find metal hoards in the Bronze Age? Why do we find them? Now, when we think about hoards, you're not really referring to beaker burials where you get, equipment associated with archery. You get beaker pots. You get various metal arrowheads and flint arrowheads and all the rest of it. That's not what we're referring to in regards to the likes of a hoard. So I thought the other week when we've looked at Ireland and we've looked at gold artifacts in Ireland and we've looked at Cumbria and other localities, I thought, right, let's try and deal with this question, and maybe we'll get an answer, or maybe we won't be able to get an answer at all. And anyone that's asking online, anyone been to Arthur's Cave? Depending on which Arthur's Cave that is. Right. So let's just get onto the first image, and I've got the first image that we look at have been sent over to me via our friend Henry, right? So the first one is going to be a bit odd, right? And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, I don't really get what that's about. And is it an ornamental mace head? I don't really know. So I've got these images that I just want to zap at you, and maybe I'm going to come back to these. Not today, but look at the spiral designs on the side there, and obviously it's made of stone rather than metal, right? So that's the first object. We're gonna chuck in a couple of mystery objects, right? And that's a really nice one. Obviously, the two objects that we're seeing now, and the objects that we have seen in the past from Ireland, and again, I just want to chuck these in here as sort of little red herrings to sort of stir the imagination and to get an idea of the designs, right? And might come back to these next week. I was actually this week going to look at farming, and I was going to look at gardens in the Bronze Age, which is something that I've given talks on in the past. But again, we'll be doing that in the not too distant future, right? So this object I'm going to show you now is that, amazing enough, is Bronze Age, right? And you're thinking it just looks so modern. It just looks like something that you might wear today. Well, definitely in 1920s and 1930s. But you can see all these are linked together, and it's absolutely beautiful. And we actually showed you an example of this last week, and we didn't really have a good image. And these ones have been found. This example has been found in Northern Ireland, and again, it's just to sort of stir your imagination. But one of the items that really stirs our imagination, we will come back to this again later on this evening. This. Now, last week, can you remember that we showed this last week, and I said that this itself was in many ways a miniature example of a cauldron from the Bronze Age, right? And this is an example of a cauldron amazingly enough, that is actually made of gold, right? And it's a little miniature cauldron. And I showed you this last week, and the image that I showed you was just not good enough, right? And I just, again, I wanted to show you this to sort of stir our imaginations at the beginning of this. And again, we will come back to this later on this evening. Again, it's just to stir us a little bit, right? So I wanted to come to this. This is the article of the week. Now, last week, and Margaret said this to me. She sent I think 4 press reports to me. I can't exactly remember how many she sent, and I just thought, right, I'll just use one and I'll explain it. Right. So what in the image, it speaks for itself. New data from Bronze Age German graves suggest complex societies existed in ancient Europe before classical Greek and Roman. And when we say complex, there was a division of them and us, right? There was a sense of, some people living in buildings that were separate from supposedly their owners. There was a clear division in how people lived in the Bronze Age, and this is what we're exactly seeing in regards to some of these sites in wonderful Germany. And I thought I'll just share this on the screen. So it's saying that this idea of division, i.e., them and us, is something that can be seen into the Neolithic period and definitely in the Bronze Age. And they're doing lots of study about this in Europe. And this is reported in the journal Science, and the research centered on genome-wide data gathered from 104 individuals buried in Germany's Schlick Valley. And this is in the heart of the Bronze Age, their Bronze Age, which is our Bronze Age as well, 4,500 years ago, and conducted, of course, by the Max Planck Institute. And what we've got is certain types of grave goods, especially weapons, daggers, axes, chisels, and arrowheads in male graves, and elaborate body ornaments in female graves, large headdresses, massive leg rings, as well as pins in graves of both sexes are likely status associated. Well, I'm not always one that likes to go with that male and female division. Some women may have been buried with items that is described that the men have got, and likewise for men being buried with sort of elaborate body on or adornments and so on. But I think what this is getting at is that there are among the cohorts of corpses, they found examples of children and adolescents who were genetically related to adult males and who had been interred with significant artifacts. So this suggests that social standing was inherited rather than earned. So that's rather interesting. So again, rather interesting that you've got children buried with wonderful ornate objects, which is not something that we would usually associate when we look at burials from any period in the past. It's usually the last individuals in society that are buried with anything are children. But it's when we're looking at this Bronze Age context, we see the likes of children being buried with goods that were naturally seen associated with adults. Some other individuals were genetically unrelated to either high status males or females. Now this is the point, and were buried in graves with few, if any, grave goods. Now that's interesting. So who were these people? Were they naturally low status people? Some of these people at times in early stages lived in the same buildings as the other people that were naturally seen to be buried with luxurious goods, and these people were not buried with things that to be considered of high status. Considering both grave furnishings and kinship, people of different status and biological relatedness likely lived together in the same household, which should therefore be seen as complex and socially stratified institutions. And the point is with that is that you've got a sense of the Bronze Age where you've got some people in just one house being having one type of social status, and then you've got a division, and you've got those people over there on the other side of the house have got a different social status, right? And this is what we were remarking with the article that I was referring to last week, and there was a case last week where you've got women and other people in the society being placed in one building which is not really much cop, and then you've got the people who are almost the people who own them, those people who actually feed them. Those people themselves are in another building, and you could tell that the building's a lot better quality and a standard. And that this is what we're seeing in the Bronze Age, that there's a division. There's a division of society, which for me is quite intriguing and interesting, because this is something that I'm very much into, where you've got a division within buildings and an access analysis and how people move around in buildings and so on. So this is something linked to that. So what I want us to do now is, away from that article, I want us to just gently think about hoards. And it's quite a dark image, this, actually, but I couldn't do any better. Now, we've been very much obsessed the past few weeks with gold, and me constantly saying, is gold, as a luxurious, high status object in the Bronze Age, as lots of commentators make it out to be. But bronze itself is massively important in this period, and we find a lot of it. We really, really do. There's copious amounts of hoards of bronze in this period. And this came to my notice, actually, because something flagged up on the old device. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about this. And it goes to show how people have a connection with history and archaeology, and it doesn't need to be a connection associated with gold. And the reason why this flagged up, it said, keep treasure in Ceredigion, says Friends of Museum. So there's the Ceredigion Museum, which is actually West Wales. And they got support to keep a nationally important hoard of Bronze Age metalwork in the county of Ceredigion. And the exciting find of over 50 bronze tools, weapons and body ornaments was made by a metal detectorist in a place called Llangeithio in West Wales in 2020. Now, this itself is an important find, and it's also important because it is now classed under Welsh law as being treasure. In the past, when an item was not silver or not gold, it was generally not classed as treasure. Now, an item that is classed as historically important, whether it's gold or not, can be classed as treasure trove under the Treasure Act. Right, so this when these detectors found this in 2020, this was classed as a find of a lifetime. And naturally, yes, it is a find of a lifetime. Now, what I'm going to do is digress from this. What metal detector enthusiasts have been finding across Britain is they've been finding these things, which are socketed axes, right? These are socketed spearheads, but these are socketed axes. And what socketed axes actually are, they're hollow, right? And what we find with these items is extremely intriguing. We sometimes find them stuffed with other bronze objects, and actually, when you get into the Iron Age, you actually find bronze axes stuffed with gold coins. So I just want to chuck that at you. I just wanted to chuck it at you in your face and think, there's a lot more to these things than meets the eye, right? So let's just go off that again. Let's just go off that altogether. Now, when we think about hoards, yes, we think about gold and silver, but when we think about hoards, we think of the Roman period, not the Bronze Age. And we think about hoards of coins, gold coins. Oh, and hordes of thousands and thousands and thousands of Roman coins. In fact, one of the biggest hoards of Roman coins in Britain that's been found to date was a hoard containing 52 coins. No, 52,000 coins. Right, 50, and they happen to all be of bronze. Right, which was classed as, I think, a month's wages or something for a Roman legion. I think we worked that out as. But anyway, the point is 52,000 coins. And naturally, in the Roman period, we think of hoards. We think, why was a Roman coin hoard buried? This is the Bronze Age, Carl. Shut up. Why was a Roman coin hoard buried? It was buried because they're going to come back for it. Okay. It was buried because they panicked and all the stuff they chucked in the ground and they left it and so on. And some people actually believe that these coin hoards were actually placed there because they just discarded the bronze. I think there's there's a conversation in Time Team where somebody puts a pot in the ground and then they fling coins into it. Well, Tony Robinson with Phil Ardin had the exercise of loaning. I think 52 thousand coins, copper coins from from the Bank of England, and they wheeled across the field in a wheelbarrow, right? All these little single 1 penny coins, and they basically said the only way you can get these coins in the ground is to basically put them in over time. You can't put the pot in the ground with the coins because it just break because it's just too many coins, right? And then we started to think that maybe people just discarded these things because they didn't want them and they just a pain in the backside, or maybe they were some kind of reverence to some kind of a god and so on. And that's all in the Roman period. So if you take those ideas into the Bronze Age, you think, what's going on here now? If you look at some of them, that's broken, right? That's broken, right? But that looks like it's been deliberately broken there, right? And you think, well, some of these don't look exactly complete. Maybe they've just corroded, or they is some of this scrap? Is this scrap metal? Like when we look at, for example, the Silverdale hoard, we think of the Viking period hoard from Silverdale, and we think, well, that is associated with maybe them wanting to go back and they collected bits of metal from around the area and they buried it in the ground, or they just couldn't be asked because it was just tat. Now, again, we try and get through some of those answers. So after they had a coroner, this was classed as treasure, right? Now, the coroner said this was worth £4,200. Now, it doesn't sound a lot to you guys. It don't sound a lot to me for something that's thousands of years old. But it meant that the metal detecting enthusiast and the landowner, by selling these as one lot, right, to a museum, they could in turn have some value. Now, the only way to sell this is in one group, right? That's what makes it treasure, because it's all together, right? And that's the point. This is treasure, right? Again. So Bronze Age hoards are exceptionally rare in some parts of Britain, but they're very common in other parts of Britain, like London. There's more than one or two hoards being found down that way, and we look at two today. And but in some other parts of the world we don't get many. And again, I'm up against the problem of trying to understand this. Now, this is found in Ceredigion, right? Now, the Ceredigion is the county that we looked at copper mines, some of the first copper mines in Britain, right? And we think, oh, right, okay. We don't find many bronze hoards in Ceredigion. And that's where the copper's mined. Why is that? Why is that? In other parts of the country where copper isn't mined, you find lots of copper and bronze objects, right? So it's the same. It's the same problem that we have when we're thinking about gold objects, i.e., yeah, we've done this several times. Let's not bore you to death, folks. But I've said that where lots of gold is found, it's usually not where the gold originated. We looked at Ireland, didn't we? We also looked. We've mentioned Norfolk a few times, where lots of gold objects found, but gold doesn't come from there. And in many ways, and gold is being mined in different parts of Wales, but not much gold is being found in Wales. It's being found somewhere else. And when we think about that, not being able to understand why we don't get loads of these things in an area when that's where they come from, it's the same question that we see in the medieval period as well. And I just wanted to bring this into this, folks, because when we think about the medieval period, we think about Wales being a very poor place, when in fact it's got copper, it's got lead, it's got iron, it's got gold, it's got stone, it's got slate, right? And the Normans conquer Wales entirely from 1283. And you're thinking, well, why couldn't Wales have used its mineral wealth to defend against the Normans? And then the answer why the Normans wanted to conquer Wales is because it was very wealthy. And then obviously in turn, the wealth was taken away and we become a very poor nation in the medieval period. And Wales is a very poor nation in regards to the rest of Britain today. I know that sounds quite political, but you could argue, Peter could argue, that Cornwall should be richer than it is when it supplied most of the world's tin. And Wales should be richer than it is when it provided most of the world's coal, right? And maybe we're getting closer to answering the questions why we get collections of material in certain areas. Is it to do with exploitation? Is it to do with something else? Questions, answers, questions, answers. So they're discovered. So when we look at this as well, when we look at these artifacts, you can see the bangles there, can't you, on the right hand side of the screen, and you're thinking you remember seeing them in gold, right? And yes, you do remember seeing them in gold, because we're going to look at a couple of examples tonight as well. So when we think of this, chuck in the words metalwork and traditions in Ceredigion, right? But not much evidence. Their burial represents a considerable gathering of people choosing to gift their prized bronze objects into the ground, probably as an expression of deep-held religious beliefs. Now, that's what the museum, the museum for Aberystwyth believes. You know, the Ceredigion Museum. That's what they believe. That's what they believe. They believe that these items refer. Each of these items refers to an offering made by somebody in society, and I don't see that. I'm sorry, I just don't see that, because they're all different items. It's like what we're going to do, guys. I'm going to have a bring and buy sale. just bring something different, right? And everyone brings something different, right? But if you're gonna if you're gonna do something votively, you're gonna offer the same thing, surely, aren't you? Because when I look at Roman temples, you look at, for example, this is a good example. When you look at the Temple of Mithras in London, when they originally excavated the Temple of Mithras in 1956, so there around, the building that's now under the Bloomsbury, in the offices there, they literally found tens of thousands of pottery lamps at the Temple of Mithras, and there were so many pottery lamps at the Temple of Mithras. People going there to see the excavations could take a lamp home with them, right? That's how many there were, right? When they excavated in the 1950s. Nothing like that would happen now. They'd all be in a nice museum. You could get an idea. But the point is, everybody's bringing a lamp. That's what you do votively. That's what you do ritualistically. That's what you do religiously, right? So I don't see this as being an expression of people gathering, putting something in the ground. I don't see that, but I've given you the answer why I think that. So the fine spot of this was it was excavated by the extraordinary, brilliant Dyfed Archaeological Trust. Now, the Dyfed Archaeological Trust is one of the finest archaeological trusts in Wales. Those people excavate the same way I do. They all got helmets on and high vis and boots. They're brilliant excavations that they run. And they looked at where this was actually found. And that's one other thing. That's one thing that I've not mentioned. When hoards are found and they're reported to archaeology, we send in teams to excavate the area to see if we can find more objects. So it said, we're very excited at the prospect of keeping these unique and hugely important finds in Ceredigion to show them in the museum. The hoard offers an important opportunity to glean more information about our prehistoric ancestors. And this is the point. I think this is very exciting. Exciting news about a unique and rare discovery. And it's good that these artifacts are kept within the area, because that's another thing as well. In the modern day and age, and I'm going to say something very political in a moment, which I do apologize in advance, but I need to say it. But I won't say that yet. When objects are found in a local area and you can put them in a museum, you can say they've found here, they got links with the local community. That's really important. And maybe if the mold cape was discovered today, it would be kept in the area of mold in North Wales, right, rather than going to the British Museum. It's like the Staffordshire treasures; they've remained up north as well, which is brilliant, and I'm sure you'll all agree. Right. What is now very dangerous, and this is probably a political thing, but I've got to try and undo the politics for certain reasons, as you know. There's a certain city council in Britain that is 300 million pounds in debt, right? And they're now thinking of selling some of the treasure that have been found in their county to try and pay back some of the debts that the council has. And you know what I'm talking about if you've watched the news today, right? And that's dangerous. And when the reason why people put things in a British museum is they're safe, right? So you've got two different arguments there, but many times when objects are found locally, it's good to keep them locally because there's a link with the local community, particularly these objects, 3,000 years old, definitely linked with the local community, right? So we did. I was going to look at something next, known as the Kerry horn, right? The bronze horn of Kerry, right, in Ireland. But we're not going to do that yet. The reason why we're not going to do that yet is that takes us in a completely different direction, right? And I want us to look at some of these hoards a little bit more first, okay? So the next one is this one. Now, the one that we've just looked at, as you know, was found in 2020. Now, this one itself was actually found about a decade ago, and this is actually again from West Wales, Carmarthenshire, And the other thing as well is what I've not done today is actually show you in maps where these things are from. So you know these are from West Wales, and I wanted to be more vague tonight. And I thought about this, and I thought by being vague, it puts these artifacts across Britain because there are lots of hoards that have been found across Britain like this, right? And I just thought be a little bit more vague than you were last week. This Bronze Age hoard, um, again, has been declared treasure trove, right? And very, very interesting. What can you see? You can see, oh, that's broken because there's no little arm on it, no connection arm on the that should have a little thing there. Because what happens is that this is the socket in here, right? And it's hafted, right? And usually you can have a bent piece of wood there like this and so on. Uh, or you could put something together halved in it, but that's for tying there, so that's really important. The reason why I've marked that up is that the objects are broken. You know, they're broken. They're broken objects, and initially when you think of this, oh, is it an offering to the gods? Right? Is it what is it? You know, somebody else saying, is it an offering to the gods? Right. And I think there's something more fundamental going on here. Right. More fundamental. Now, you could say, oh, look, Karl, it's easy. You know, there's a scrap metal merchant going around and collecting bronze together. But when you think about it, right, is it the same here? Because I know there's objects broken, but there's not many broken, right? So is that different from this, right? Well, if this is different from this, then there's different reasons why things are buried in the ground. And I'm sure we'll all agree. So again, this has been classed as treasure. So there's a Bronze Age hoard, again from West Wales, Carmarthenshire, actually. At the end of the M4, if you know the M4 in the south, it starts in London, goes all the way through, and then ends up in West Wales and basically ends up very near a place called Carmarthen. That's the M4. And this itself is again 3,000 years old. And there in this, there are 13 bronze artifacts, including part of a bronze bracelet, fragments of a large bronze spearhead, but you can see it's broken. Look at that. Hang on a minute. If they reconstruct that together, look at that big bit missing, you know. So okay, right. And what you've got more or less a complete socketed axe, but it's not. And this was all placed on display. So you've got lots of broken objects here. And again, is this a scrappy going around collecting metal? But it bids the question. It does bid the question that why in history, and again, Roman period, Anglo-Saxon, you even got medieval period as well, all the way through into the prehistory. You have lots of these things seemingly placed into the ground, right? And nobody ever comes back for them. And you're thinking, well, why were they placed in the ground in the first place? They can't be that careless. If they spent the time going around collecting these bronze objects, why have they placed them in the ground? What's going on? Right? Is it scrappy? That the thing is, as this is quite valuable, why is it being placed in the ground and forgotten? Bit odd. And we get too many of these anomalies in history. Sometimes we like to simplify it and say, oh, they were meant to come back for it, or it's for gods, it's for revering the gods or something. But what would the gods do with broken bits of a broken axe and a broken spear and broken bracelets and all these different things? So this was found by Kevin Sawyer, actually. He was also metal detecting. From land in Carmarthenshire. So the hoard has since been identified and reported on by museum archaeologists at the National Museum of Wales, and is thought to date from roughly 3,000 years ago. And again, it's an incredible hoard for somebody that had only been metal detecting for 6 months. And, you know, it's And it's just, again, what does this mean? What does this really mean? Landowner gave the guy permission to metal detect, and again, he'd only had this hobby for a short period of time. But going by his description, right, going by his description, he said, I got a very strong signal from the metal detector, and after digging about 14 inches, which is just over a foot, um, into the ground, I could immediately identify a piece of bronze. Now, I think that's really interesting that he's having to dig over a foot in the ground, and his metal detector is able to detect that deep. So, knowing a little about these historical pieces, I had a fairly good idea of what I had discovered. So, an archaeological investigation and survey of the area was undertaken by archaeologists working for the Portable Antiquities Scheme and National Museum of Wales and the amazing Dyfed Archaeological Trust again. So, Adam Gwilt, curator of the bronze collection at the museum, um, through this and other recent finds, we are learning more about the kinds of places within landscapes where Bronze Age hoards were carefully buried. And the spearhead and the broken bracelet there show the kinds of personal and weaponry adornment items being buried. And when they're talking about kinds of places within a landscape that these are being deposited, I think that's rather interesting. But maybe it might be a little bit misleading saying that. Now, the raw materials and casting byproducts also within the hoard add to our wider picture of bronze casting towards the end of the Bronze Age. So what we're talking about is that these objects here are the end results of the casting process. I don't know if that is there, but these definitely are. So as you pour into the mold, right? These are the little these are little sprues that you've got to cut off the final object, right? So these are being found when you think about this, you think okay, you've got broken objects, you've got objects that are associated with casting. And it's just like very interesting. You've got a collection of odd objects, but you not just only find this here, you find them in varying different places. So it's been confirmed from the work undertaken that the hoard was buried 3,000 years ago, and it's said, not by me, but as an offering to the gods, and you can see why. And it's got amazing views over the landscape, very amazing views of the landscape. So they because it's classed as treasure trove, even though it's bronze, they do get a cash sum reward. Obviously, it's not a life-changing check, but it's something that'll help um, pay for a few more batteries and so on. But the real value is actually in that this dates from 3,000 years ago, and absolutely amazing. The artifacts within the Carmarthenshire County Museum, and again, the Bronze Age lasted hundreds of years, it's said, but we have little from that time in Carmarthen past to show. But now we're naturally building up this story, building up this picture, and obviously by finding more of these hoards, we're learning more and more about this rich period in history. And again, I think by looking at the Bronze Age, we're learning lots and lots of things every week in these classes. Right, so let's move on. Now, this is when it gets to big time, right? We're now playing with the big boys, and yeah, we really are. Now, what this is known as the Havering Hoard. And this is Havering, London, near the Thames, and this was found in 2018. And again, we're loving it because this hoard itself, and I'll show you how it was being found in the ground. This is not the Havering hoard. This is another one. This is Peterloo hoard. That's how it's found in the ground. Look at it. Amazing, isn't it? Absolutely amazing. Just one chunk of metal in the ground. So obviously this has been placed in the ground in some kind of bag, right? So this is known as the Havering hoard. And how many items did they find? 453 late Bronze Age artifacts found at a site overlooking the River Thames, known as the Havering hoard in 2018. Absolutely amazing. 453 items, all congealed together. So it's the largest Bronze Age hoard to be found in London and the third largest found anywhere in Great Britain. And the discovery was made during metal detecting enthusiastic. No, it wasn't. It was actually found by archaeologists. Right, archaeologists do find things occasionally, and we do find hoards as well. We do find gold and lots of other things. Now, yes, this was found via an archaeological investigation of the site prior to its use for gravel extraction. So, in other words, they had an idea that there might be something there. Planning permission was given to a company involved in gravel extraction, but as one of the prerequisites for the planning permission, they had to have archaeologists on site. So the archaeologists on site found these absolutely beautiful objects. Again, 453. So when we look at an image, they're not all there. So so the finds include weapons. So okay, let's just go to. Hang on, I've just got to double check to see if I've got an image more of, or we couldn't get them. No, we couldn't get them. I couldn't find an image with that. That's not the one there. But these are only some of them anyway. So what they've got, the finds included weapons, as you can see, they're intact. They're intact. There you go. So they're not. Most of these are intact. Obviously, there's other bits with them, as we'll mention. But you're thinking, well, is this scrap? What's going on? And I don't think it is. I'm pretty sure it's not. So the finds include weapons. So you've got the axe heads there and the arrowheads. There you go. Okay. When Claire says, "Do you want to come and see my socketed arrowhead?" That's what she's looking at. And so we're looking at all this. So also the finds included weapons, tools, ingots, and a small quantity of jewelry. And you're thinking, this is not a scrappy. This is something else, right? This is really, really something else. It was unusual. This was also unusual as well, because the 453 objects were not all found together in one big, massive lump, right? They were found in 4 separate locations, and this is the thing, you see, because most Bronze Age hoards previously excavated have been concentrated in a single location, but these are four hoards all related around the same date that are found within close approximation to each other, and have 443 items altogether. Some of the items are from Europe. Some of them are from Europe, demonstrating links with that region. Several proposals have been put forward for the origin of the hoard, which include, wait for it, let's go through the list, a collection of goods for recycling. Well, I'm not happy with that. An attempt by a single individual to control the bronze trade in the area. Okay. Or the large-scale abandonment of bronze goods at the start of the Iron Age. So they decided to chuck them all in the ground and forget them. And I'm thinking, if I can use an expletive, crap, right? Because they continue to use bronze in the Iron Age as, if we look at bronze in the Roman period, bronze statues, bronze coins, bronze metalwork, bronze fittings for buildings, bronze this, bronze that, and all the rest of it, right? So that's 1,000 odd years on. And obviously the point is that I don't go with that. So do I go with it? These have all been abandoned? No. Right, okay. Do I go with these to do with recycling? No. Is it buried by somebody wanting to come back for these items? I probably think no on that. So what's these about? So the artifacts are currently on exhibition at the Museum of London. There we go. And obviously they will be then displayed at the Havering Museum in Romford. So let's just have a little bit more detailed look at these. Right. So the Havering hoard was found at these 4 localities within a large enclosure ditch. It is believed that 453 separate objects in the hoard have been deliberately placed at these locations. All right. The total weight of all these items is the weight of a full wheelbarrow full of bronze. That's how much we're talking about. 45 kilograms. And not just socketed axe heads and spearheads, but swords, knives, daggers, woodworking tools, statue of Lloyd George, metalworking tools, ingots, and other items. And again, terret rings. And what terret rings are round rings, basically, to prevent the rains from tangling on Bronze Age carts. And these terret rings had been only found in France up until that stage, but now we're finding them over here. So we've got some trappings associated with Araquas, our horse. So, oh, hang on a minute. Right, hang on. My head's going. Right, so, oh God, my head's really going because it's like, this represents Bronze Age society. This is like, it's like a time capsule. All right, okay. But not a time capsule. But in many ways it represents Bronze Age society, right? It really, really does. And maybe that says something. Maybe I've just said something without knowing it, right? Apart from a small number of bracelets, one of which was determined to have come from northwestern France, they did find a little bit, bit of the jewelry as well, but not a lot. But again, a representation of the Bronze Age world in one area. If you're going to try and understand the Bronze Age world, you get one of these collections. Some of the axe heads are from continental Europe as well. And where do the copper ingots come from? Wales. No, they don't. They come from where Oxley the Iceman comes from, where the Alps is. Thinking, all right, okay, Karl, what's going on? Why is there bronze? Why not? Why is there copper? Why are there copper ingots from the Alps? Come on, help. When we're mining it, when we're mining a little bit in Cornwall, as you know, we're mining lots in Wales. So these findings indicates that the area had extensive links to the continent during the Bronze Age. And you're thinking, Karl, drag your neck in a little bit, right? It's easier to get bronze, or easier to get the materials from bronze, or it's easier to get copper from the continent because it's the River Thames. Yeah, so you go up the Rhine, right? Straight into the North Sea, and then you trade that way. And yeah, okay, that's probably makes sense, really, when you think about it. Ooh, heck, taking a lot out of me, this is. So the hoard proved to be the largest Bronze Age hoard to be found in London and the 3rd largest in the whole of the UK. So dating from around 3,000 years ago. Now, some of the weapons are complete, some are broken, some are damaged. Researchers noted that it was unusual to find distinct collections within the same hoard. Most hoards are isolated concentrations of finds. Several theories have been proposed as to the origins of the hoard. Some researchers propose that it is a religious offering. Do I go with that? Probably know the answer, don't you? Others suggest that it was a site where bronze materials were collected for recycling by a metal worker. But I struggle with that because it's like this is so valuable. This material is so valuable. It's been so difficult to produce. And you know, okay, there's tin over there and there's copper there. You know, and you've got somebody to work these and put them together and make the molds. And you know, 453 of these things. Another proposal is there was a temporary stash of a traveling metal worker who did not wish to carry heavy goods with him. But if this was a one-off, yeah, all right, fair enough. But you get loads of these things. It may also represent a large-scale abandonment of bronze tools at a time when they were being replaced by iron versions, or else an attempt by a powerful individual to control the trade in bronze. Or is it none of those things? None of those suggestions. It is not known why the hoard was not recovered in the Bronze Age. And again, it's on display in the Museum of London Docklands, actually. Still, so let's just think a little bit more and try to understand the context where these items are found. Right, and there we go again. Look at that, love it, nice. It's one of the four, anyway, one of the four sets of material. So the Havering hoard was found in 2018 archaeological excavation routine at a site north of the River Thames that was to be developed for gravel extraction. The site had been identified as a possible Bronze Age enclosure since the 1960s, when aerial photography revealed crop marks that indicated the presence of earthworks. The surrounding area is known to be rich in Bronze Age artefacts, and the planning consent, as we know, was the pre-requirement of archaeological work at the site before the people working there could actually start. The requirements had been included at the suggestion of Historic England. The quarry company commissioned archaeologists to get in, and hence why we were able to recover this, and were able to recover the four elements of the hoard sort of intact, so the four individual areas. It was discovered on a Friday afternoon as the site was closing for the weekend. And as you know, folks, archaeologists always find something on the last day of an excavation or at the end of the day. Sod's law. The discovery was made by 21-year-old Harry Platts, who had started with the archaeological company and had only been on a temporary 6-week contract. He uncovered an axe head, and after working overtime into the evening, the team located further objects buried together in a pit a couple of meters wide. The discovery was ruled to be treasure by the coroner. After leaving the company, Platt went on to study for a master's degree in archaeology at the University of York. And I think that's great. Got a really nice story there. But if we ignore all the reasons why this is buried in the ground, what are we left with? Remember what Sherlock Holmes said. So when you've what did he used to say? When you've eliminated the obvious, the stuff that isn't obvious is what happened, or something like that. Can't remember. Arthur Conan Doyle. My quotes from him are not correct. Right. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a break, and I'm going to grab something to drink. I need it. Probably coffee, and we've got lots more to come after the break. So we've got another hoard. We've got some really nice stuff in Milton Keynes as well. We've got these horns. We've got some stuff about horns, a little bit about the Nessa Brodka, and then that's it. And I don't know how Drina managed to do it. She managed to chuck the money over whilst I was doing the lecture. Thank you very much, Drina. I know that's you know, really appreciate that, Drina. But multitasking, I didn't think women could multitask, to be honest. Oh, I can't say that because Margaret's not here. She said, "What a cheek." And this weird question I had online as well about somebody talking about where's Arthur's cave. Well, Arthur's cave in Pencoed, and we don't want to go there. I don't want to go there either. Anyway, so we'll ask if there's any questions, and wonderful. David will be getting his Bronze Age cauldrons lecture very soon. So there you go. David, anything you want to ask? Question?
No, thank you.
Okay. Talking about smiley women without her glasses on, it's Drina.
Did bronze get I don't know what the word I'm looking for is.
Resmelted. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Well,
So
well,
you throw broken bits away, wouldn't they?
yeah, yeah. Just one thing. If you got a brass or a bronze bell, you send them in to be resmelted, and
Yeah.
then it's resmelted. End of. And why did they throw it away? Why? And I'm just thinking, okay, right. Let's just sit down and be sensible, right? And I've mentioned lots of times that things are buried in the ground, and you're thinking, right, okay, this would have taken a lot of effort, and okay, let's just spit it out, right? Life in the Bronze Age was bloody difficult, right? Life today is pretty hard, right? Except we leave cars lying around everywhere and we've got mounds of rubbish and all the rest of it. But we can afford to do that because we're an opulent society that allows other people to deal with our crap. Back then they didn't have dustbin men, right? And they had to dispose of their own things. But I don't think they're disposing. I don't think they're disposing of this stuff in the obvious sense. And they're people are a bit too obsessed with people are a bit too obsessed with, you know, that they had loads of time to bury things and loads of times to worship gods and all the rest of it. And I'm thinking, just bring your neck in a bit, because I can't really go into that. I really can't. And if we ignore all the other things that we've mentioned, that it's a scrappy, it's there's something else going on that I just cannot put my finger on it. Because I can remember give it. Okay, let's look at the Romans again, because that's the good way of doing this. When because we associate hoards with the Roman period. Well, we used to. So whenever a hoard's found, it's usually a Roman hoard, and we're thinking, right, okay, and we're thinking usually the headline news with the Roman hoard is that they buried it because they're going to come back for it, or they buried it, things were hard, they're going to come back for it, or it's their miniature bank, they're going to come back for it. Well, I got to be honest with you, the legions had no intention of going back to collect those 52,000 coins, which weighed so much they couldn't be bothered they just left it there, right? And it's not buried in individual bags. It's deliberately buried in a big pot in the ground, which has been put in the ground first, and the coins have been chucked in there, right? And they're different coins, and you're thinking, well, what is going on? What is really, really going on? Is there something that we can't really connect with, right? And when I've been now, we used to have a woman in our classes in Lantworth Major called Kathy, right? And Peter experienced this. People used to put coins on prehistoric sites. And I used to get very upset when she used to take the 20 pence or the 50 pence that had been put within the stones and the gaps. And she said, "Oh, the people won't need this. I'll give it to my grandchildren." I thought, well, okay, but you're taking it away. But again, if you want to use the inference of the past, and you're thinking, well, these people are burying things in the past, and they're not coming back for them. They're putting them there, or numbers of people putting them there. What is exactly going on? And I'm struggling trying to come up with a plausible answer, because it can't be because these are scrappies. These scrappies must have been completely. They must have been idiots to not go back for stuff that they buried in the ground. Absolutely idiotic. They spent weeks collecting this stuff and they bury it in the ground and they forget where it is. And there's loads of examples of this. They can't be that careless. It don't make sense. Anyway, anything else, Drina?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Hopefully I'm not sounding as if I'm lecturing you. What I'm trying to do is get you to think about this in a different way, because I can't for the life of me find an easy answer. I can't. It's just not. It doesn't ring right. Andy.
Hoards are really quite intriguing, because I think it's the same problem as with a lot of things, that we look for a simple answer and there isn't one.
No.
Some of those, like one of those hoards with all those broken bits, I would quite happily accept as being scrap, being collected together for whatever reason. What we don't know is what happened to the owner, and he may have had a heart attack. He may have been murdered.
But there's too many people being murdered and having a heart attack. But you were going to say something else. Go for it.
Yeah, well, I think there are other reasons why the stuff's buried as well, but I'm not sure. But what I'm also kind of intrigued is that despite kind of stuff breaking down over time and metal staying, being there a bit longer, is that we don't find hoards, or very rarely find a hoard of anything else other than metal. We don't find pottery hoards, or we don't find, well, it's unlikely to find wooden ones, but clothing or what, I mean, again, that wouldn't last very long, but you find bits of pottery and bits of clothing and bits of this and bits of that, but you don't find it all collected together in a big heap. So
they did find when Julia and I were looking at shoes, looking at the history of shoes.
Well, no, that's not quite right. There are thousands of shoes at Vindolanda, but they have not been collected together. They have just been discarded in a lair.
Yeah.
Perhaps in one area, like a rubbish tip. These are specifically put in the ground.
Yes, they weren't buried. They were put in caves. The ones that are in West United States we were looking at. Yeah, but there were,
right, yes.
There was lots of them. And probably were discarded or something, but they were in caves I forget, somewhere to the west of.
I'm kind of thinking like in the UK, we find lots of hoards all over the place. Do not find lots of hoards of anything else.
No, but that's
there are odd ones, but
it just reminded me there was such a whole pile of these shoes that they put there. I don't know, for some reason.
And I take Anne's point, and we'll bring in with what Andy said, right? And I was going to make the point of if we look at the Nazca people, we see them go into the Nazca lines, and we get in some places stacks of pottery that have been dumped there, deliberately broken, that have come from villages which are hundreds of miles away, right? Now, from that we can infer that they've created a pot 100 miles away, brought it to the Nazca lines, dumped it on the ground, and just buggered off back home. That was the exercise, right? That's what Anne's talking about, and that's what Andy's talking about. But we don't get that in a British context. It's just metal, and I think that's a very important point of Andy. We don't find piles of pots. If we do find piles of pots, they're usually wasters from pottery kilns in the like UNE pottery in South Wales. They have thousands of bits of broken pot, or the Nant Garrow pottery where they only kept the best of the best, and they just chucked the stuff out that had a defect in it, right? That's a manufacturing thing, right? But am I then saying, if I take that, am I then saying that all this broken material is manufacturing waste? And I'm thinking, I can't even go there, because I know there's lots of bronze being produced, but was there so much bronze being produced that they could afford just leave it there?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so, because that would be easily traceable. If it's a process of smelting, right? You'd see the byproduct. You'd see wasters, and you'd see lots more sprues, like we did see with the one, but that was almost a one-off. And there was an episode of Time Team, talking about Time Team, where they had they were trying to find a metal working site, right? It's this typical Time Team. They were trying to find a metal working site, and they spent the whole day trying to find it. Can't find it, right? And then spent the next day, can't find it. And then somebody said, do you know the spall heap over there, right? I happen to have a few magnets. And I went through the whole spall heap with magnets, and they come out with loads and loads of little bits of metal, right? This is where it was. Oh, we should have done that in day one. Typical Time Team, right? But the problem is that, again, when we're not really getting a metallic process as these being wasters, what we have found when we look at the Great Orme, for example, when we did the Great Orme when did we do the Great Orme lecture? Was it like 3 months ago? It seems like it. And we went there and we said, oh, they found a mold, haven't they? Remember the mold that they found? Yeah, and it was a nice little mold. And they were making them and so on. But what we don't get is loads of these hoards where they're mining the copper and probably smelting it. And you're just thinking, there's something that I'm not getting. I'm not reading it. I just can't see it. I can't see it. I just can't see it. When we look at archaeology, I can usually see things, as you know, and we can get together and we can come up with ideas and so on. But with this one, it's so difficult. It really is. And by the end of this tonight, there's more. There's more coming. More questions than answers, really. Anyway, anything else, Andy, before we just
no? Fascinating
Okay.
subject.
Okay, Anne.
Well, look at all those axe heads and arrows. Well, especially axe heads. Looking at them, they looked as though some of them were decorated and had bands and patterns, little bits on them, and obviously they are quite difficult to make. But then you showed us that necklace, and I'm blown away with that. I mean, what tools did they have to make that with, and how could they make it so even? I mean, just seemed, it was almost something you expect. It looked almost like machine made. It was so fine, and I just amazing.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll just show you that again. As we go in from after the break, and we'll just look at those again. Anyway, Peter.
Well, most of this, the man who produced this stuff probably traded it for other desirables, maybe food or whatever. And the person who produced the food, etc., obviously will be collecting a considerable amount of the bronze items, because he's using them as almost as money. And therefore, he may well have collected a lot. And on his passing, it may well be that's when these things may well have got buried. He may well have buried them to keep them secure, and then having passed away, no one knew about them.
But there is a lot of examples of this, and it's just like, if these were one-off, we could go along with it. But there seems to be a nature of OCD about this. It just seems to be like too many. It's just too much.
Is there any concept of small armies? Because you can imagine if there was, people wouldn't carry them individually all the year round. They would put them somewhere, and then when they had a problem, they'd go and get one each. And
that's a nice idea.
And
like a dump,
and then come back and put them all in together again.
Like an arms dump.
Like a modern army.
Well, the concept of armies is more of a more over the past 1,000 or so years, and sort of organized armies,
big gangs like the Vikings and so on. There's 100 people get together.
So if we take that concept away from David, right? If we just steal that concept and we mutate it a little bit, and we think these are items that respond to a need, right? And whether that need is for defense, whether that need is for times that we need this material, right, in times of warfare or times for trade, right? That would make like a bank, in a sense, like an arms dump or whatever you want to call it, David, right? That would stick a little bit more. I tell you what, we'll add a little bit to it next week, right? It's not for the scrappy, right? We'll add it as just a little bit as a keepsake, and just in case, right? That rings a little bit easier. I got to be honest with you. And that's why it's then there, because then eventually the threat that there was went away. And equally, David, you can look at it this way as well. You can look at it this way, and this is an interesting way of looking at this. When you look at Roman coin hoards again, I know I'm banding on about this. We look at it the other way. We always say, "Oh, they buried it because there was a threat." You know, what about they buried it to deal with a threat, and the threat never ever came? That makes sense. That sits better. That sits well. For example, how many people do we know are misers? Right. I'm sure we've had relatives, and they've said, right, I've saved all my granddad. Right. This is my granddad. Right. When he was when my granddad sadly passed away in 2007, he was in when he was 93, he was still driving, right? When he was 94, he wasn't, and obviously he wasn't able to work anymore, and 6 months later he died. But when he was 93, he had saved up £10,000 to buy a new car, and this was in 2007. He could have got a nice car for that, right? And it was just in the bank, and we all shared out the money when my granddad died, and he never bought that car. But I'm sure that we hear about their example a lot, right? So if we want to take that concept away and move it from the bank into my granddad's garden, we dug up £10,000 in my granddad's garden. It's the same concept. And that, yeah, I like that, David. I like that one. That fits better. You could sit on the horse better with that one. Nice. Okay then. What we're going to do, we're going to take a break now. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and we'll be back. So I'll speak to you then.
Carl, we've lost Pete.
Have we?
Yeah, he went just before, about 2 minutes ago. I don't know whether he's coming back or whatever, but he just disappeared.
He is actually still on the screen, but he's not really there. So
Okay, well, that's all right. We'll give him a chance to have his break then and see if he's all right after that.
yeah, okay, we will. Okay, we'll be back soon. We'll be back very soon. At the bottom. Right, okay, we got that. Okay, let's go and get my drink. Okay, we've still got melted kings, got that one, that one, that one, that one. Okay. The last. There you are, Pete. We thought you'd fallen off the face of the earth. There he is, Andy. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I switched it off. Did somebody put it back on again?
No.
Oh.
You were with your fancy woman, were you, Pete?
Oh, aye.
We'll never know what you and Sandra got up to. Unless you tell us, that is.
Oh, Roger always used to get the bus early.
Well, I'm not going to taking this any further, Pete. Choose company and all that, is it, Pete?
Aye.
I think you deliberately did that with the toilet roll just to really upset him.
Yeah, but I still do it. But why he would turn the damn thing around, I don't know.
So, when did you discover he was turning a toilet roll the other way round? Was it Sandra said something or something?
No, next time I went round to use it, it had been turned round.
So then you deliberately did it that way then?
No, I always turned it back. I always had it the same way. With hanging down the back of the roll. But Roger had it over the front of the roll.
I got to be honest with you, Roger is one strange man.
Oh, he certainly is that. Yeah. He's all right. He's a nice enough chap, but as you say, he is a bit strange.
I love him to bits. He's lovely.
Yeah.
Right, so here we go. And do I need that on charge? That's fully charged. Well, let's crack on with the next bit. Right, so there we go. Share the doodah. And let's do. Oh God, I don't know where the video I am. Okay, we're gonna get back into the flow. Right. Okay, flow. There we go.
We've got a bronze axe head on Flatholm we found, and that is currently in the Cardiff Museum. But that was never hollow.
That was solid.
Solid, yeah.
Why is that? Why is that the Cardiff Museum?
Because they took it and put it in there. We did have it out on the island, but they took it and put it in the Cardiff Museum and gave us a replica to have out on the island.
All right. Okay. Okay. So as I was looking in London, I just thought, right. I thought, actually, what is this? Is that this? And it wasn't. This was a completely different hoard. And you're looking at that, and some of them there are absolutely beautiful. Others there look broken and they're bits. And okay. So this was found in London as well, a place called Egham, Peter's Sports Field. And archaeological excavations at Peter's Sports Field in 1972, 1976 discovered evidence of the Bronze Age the Roman period. And what they found was that this was a major find in London. These objects in front of us, major find. Were a late Bronze Age hoard of about 80 pieces deposited in two groups in a large ditch. Now, the hoard that we just looked at Havering was 453 items, and that was buried in 4 bits. Right. This is 80 pieces deposited in two groups in a ditch. Now, is placed in a ditch, and basically they found a mold as well, that is rather interesting, that may have actually come from South Wales, which again you need to read into that. But again, these items were found in a ditch, and it does discuss the size of the ditch, and the pieces here include a variety of weapons, obviously, tools, bits of broken vessels. That's talking about David's cauldron again, and ornamental attachments. And the most numerous artifacts present were socketed axe heads, four different types of socketed axe heads. Now, can I just jump in there quickly, right? And the reason why I'm going to jump in there quickly is that there are lots of socketed axe heads found in Britain. We find lots of them, right? Wouldn't it be great to find more of those arrowheads there? But we don't. We find inevitably loads of these socketed axe heads. And again, we find them with other items inside them as well. So what we got is socketed knives. So these are socketed knives. These things here, those are socketed knives, right? And I think those are socketed chisels, if it doesn't come to it. So what we've got is there's also a socketed sickle. Right. I can't find where the socketed sickle is on there. But the point is that the reason why they're socketed is that they're easy to mount, and that when you socket them, you don't need as much metal, right? But can you really cut down a tree with something like that, right? Because when it's socketed, there's not much weight to it. Right, so what I mean by that, if you've got a hollow hammer, you're not going to be able to bang many nails in. Now, I use a hammer a lot. I use a hammer to bang the stake in for the post knocker. I use it to bang nails in. We use it to open things. And if the hammer was hollow, right, I wouldn't really have much success with it. So lots of their items are hollow, right? So in with this collection, just to give you some background details, many of the items were unfinished or worn out through use. Some were intact. Evidence of metalworking has been attested close to this site, right? So they're working bronze close to where these are found, which is different evidence than lots of the other hoards that we find. The artifacts were deposited towards the very late of the Bronze Age. So we're talking about the 700 years BC, which is 2,700 years ago, in a ditch. Now, it was placed in a ditch that was out of use, right? And that's really interesting. It's placed in a ditch which was out of use. And they actually found a large quantity of late Bronze Age pottery and bone. So obviously the pottery and bone indicates that the ditch was used as midden. They had discarded stuff in the ditch. But these items were found in two clumps. They weren't found all over the place, willy-nilly, in with the pottery and the bones and all the rest of it. They were found in two hoards. That's what's specific. So they weren't found spread about. We've got to say that. So when we look at this and we try to understand what's going on, this puts a different narrative into this type of hoard, and quite a wide representation of items there, from a sickle to little daggers to spearheads to chisels, to broken items, non-broken items, bits of dagger hilts, for example, which are these here. I think bits of swords, all sorts of things, but there's some intact objects there. Oh, and these are fairly that's fairly intact. That's broken. That's more or less intact. That's more or less intact. That's a little bit of a break. That's more or less intact. Obviously, that's completely broken. There's a little nick in that, but not. You could probably still use that spearhead. these chisels look okay. Those daggers. So bit of a mixed match there. So forget that bronze stuff for now, right? And what we're gonna do is we're gonna do gold against gold. And what we mean, we're gonna look at a gold collection in a minute. But we're not going to do the gold stuff yet at Milton Keynes for a minute, because we're just going to go back. Because I said I would go back to this object. And if you can remember, this was from the Brochte hoard. And this was found in Limavady in Ireland. Right. So this was found in Northern Ireland. And this is now on display in the National Museum of Ireland. But there's obviously, because this was originally found in the north, there's a copy of this stuff in the Belfast Museum. But again, this I want to show you this because Anne was fascinated. I'm fascinated by that. And look at that detail in there. Now, I had my first girlfriend, actually. She actually had a chain. And she said, "Oh, use a chain," and it looked a bit like this, right? Well, actually, one of the chains, it was in silver, but this is actually in gold. And you're thinking, right, okay, the detail there is so fine, and it is difficult to try and countenance how they made this, but they did. They did. Bronze Age object, and obviously going back to this object as well. And this is like this. You can hold this in your you can hold this as in your hands, right? This isn't very big at all. But what is very interesting there is you can see again from Brochte Island, and the reason why I'm doing this now is because it links us in with the next object. So the hangs there, that would be hung there, right? And you can imagine that this would be hung quite high. And this was a miniature version in gold. This was a prototype version in gold. Who does prototypes in gold to make a bronze cauldron? Right, okay. Work that out. You make a prototype in gold because it's soft to make and a good example. But this was leading to a full cauldron, which would have been made in bronze. I thought that would be an interesting thing to chuck in there, something to go in your minds, and maybe it might add up to something. It might not, right? So what we're going to do next, again, Brochte and Ireland, and hang on a minute, and obviously, I made a mistake. This was actually an Iron Age hoard, right? Except we've got that object which we've just done would be typical of something they'd make in the Bronze Age anyway. But it doesn't mean to demean this in any way. This is still well over 2,000 years old. And again, the skill to be able to do this in gold in the Iron Age, if you did it in the Bronze Age, in the Iron Age, is still the same thing. It's absolutely amazing, right? I had to correct that there. Sorry about that little mistake. But again, prehistoric Ireland, and it's gold. Right, so what I want us to do is I want to look at that. Don't they look good? Yeah, they do. They do. I like this. And I wanted to bring you this because this is a hoard as well. And this is of course found in Ireland. No, it's not. It's found in Milton Keynes. Right? This is the Milton Keynes hoard. And this was found hundreds of years ago. No, it's found in September 2000. Amazingly enough, 2000 this was found. Right, and this is over 2 kilograms of gold. Amazing. 4.45 pounds of gold. Again, found Milton Keynes, in Monkston Park, Milton Keynes. So again, there are 2 gold torques, and you remember it goes around the neck. It's a torque, and 3 gold bracelets. So let's sort of wing these out. So you've got 2 torques there. And remember what we said with torques. Torque is a piece of metal that's been twisted and twisted and twisted, right? Twisted, that you can have a twisted bracelet, that's a torque. If it's twisted, it's called a torque. But then the word torque has come to be known as something that you put around your neck equally, right? So again, Bronze Age objects. So these date from around 3,100 years ago. So sort of middle Bronze Age. And again, we're loving this. We've got the two talks, we've got the bracelets. And what they did, they found a fragment of a bronze rod. Did we find a fragment of a piece of bronze with a hoard in Ireland last week? And yes, we did. We did. But this was actually found, hang on, not that. It was actually found, this was actually found in a pottery vessel. So these items were placed in a pottery vessel, right? So one thing I need to make, and I'm going to chuck, that is obviously been buried in a bag, in a cloth bag or a woolen bag, right? Hang on, where's the other one? Oh, the other way. Right, so we're back to London quick. Oh, hang on, there we go. It's congregated together, so that's been buried in a bag, right? That's been buried in a bag, a woolen bag, not a cloth bag, a nettle bag or something like a flax bag or whatever, right? So that's been buried in a bag, right? As equally, this has been buried in a pot, right? Now, when we say buried in a pot, you think, oh, it's about a burial. It's got to be about a burial. Really has to be. Well, no. Okay, it's buried in a pot. So there we go. So again, weighing in at 2,020 grams, so just over 2 kilograms. The hoard was described at the British Museum as one of the biggest concentrations of Bronze Age gold known from mainland Britain. Like one of them, obviously, if you take the two islands, then no. And okay, now let's use the words that British Museum use. It's important for providing a social and economic picture for the period. So what do we understand by the word economic? Maybe we've already discussed it, right? But social and economic picture for the period. But again, it's been buried in a pot. It's not been accidentally buried. It's actually been physically buried in a pot in the ground. Now, I'm actually quite amazed by this figure. It was only valued at £300,000 in September 2000, but I think today's value, and this was a decade and a half ago, I think this would probably be worth £500,000 today, maybe more actually. Several other antiquities were found near to this, right, including a Roman hoard. But when I say near to this, within 10 miles away, but that's not hardly near. So this was found by metal detector enthusiasts, again, Michael Rutland and Gordon Heritage, convenient, in Monkston Park in Milton Keynes, at the invitation of local archaeologists. So they weren't just working in a park, right? They were invited to the excavation by the archaeologists in the park. And strangely enough, as they were closing the excavation, guess what the metal detecting enthusiasts found? They found this. So as they're closing the excavation, they found these objects. Interesting enough. So this is the archaeologists got in and they excavated the area, which was great. And the metal detectors who found the hoard were rewarded with 60% of the value after the authorities decided that the landowner's claim that the finders had searched without permission was unfounded, right? So obviously they had permission off the archaeologists. Now, significance, and this gives you an idea of scale with the writing in the background. So you can imagine a normal book gives you an idea. So for the hoard in itself, in its entirety, you've got the 5 objects there and a small bronze rod, which is not in there, which is strange. And the pottery is a fine grained. So if we do that, it's finely grained pot, and it's a bowl. It's not all there, and the bowl itself would have stood around 10 centimeters high, right? So it's just like a normal bowl, 10 centimeters high. So the heaviest item is naturally, right? So if we go in with that again, you can clearly see the heaviest item there. The heaviest that weighs in at 626 grams, so over half a kilogram. And what they did X-ray fluorescence analysis, which is something that we don't usually come across. So X-ray fluorescence analysis. And that must mean that the fluorescence is recorded when that was created, but we look at it in different ways. The X-ray fluorescence analysis at the British Museum says that that those items contained 85% gold each. So that must mean there's a little bit of silver in there. There's a little bit of arsenic, and there's probably a bit of copper in there as well. So this again is really interesting in where it's found. And again, the find provides an invaluable link between gold types and the broader social and economic picture of Bronze Age Britain. But I'm not really going to be too much more specific on that. And obviously, the coroner at the coroner's inquest, they decided that it was a treasure trove. There was a little bit of a dispute, and the British Museum acquired the hoard, although replicas were made and displayed at the independently run Milton Keynes Museum to commemorate the origin of the find spot. So there's copies of this in the Milton Keynes Museum. So I wanted to chuck that in there. I really want to chuck that in there to try and stir the pot a little bit, right? So what we're going to do now, we're going to go off on a tangent, right? And this is a rather interesting tangent. And let's you've probably just already seen the image a few moments ago. It's a horn, right? And we've got two horns we look at. One that was placed on sale at Christie's, which is a nice bit of information, and we've got this as well, right? So we're going to look at this one first, and here we go. This is known as the Lisrow Bronze Age horn. And look at that there. There it is, the Bronze Age horn. Again, it's towards the late part of the Bronze Age. I think we've got another image there. That's the other one we're going to look at. Look how ornate that is. That's the other one. Okay, Bronze Age horn. It's amazing, isn't it? But anyway, if we go back with this, right, try and get that there. So this dates from, as you see the date, not quite 3,000 years ago, but 2,800 years ago or whatever. Until quite recently, the knowledge of how to play such horns was lost. And this was found in 1857. And actually, I would know how to blow something like this. Lots of people can't blow a bugle or a horn. They go no matter how hard they try, and there's and I can remember being at Tewkesbury one day, and people had these horns with wide mouth, cow horns, and they were going one making it anyway. You and I was showing the people how you blow through these things, right? But with something like this, they failed to understand how this sounded. It sounded like the bellowing of a bull, but nothing like a war trumpet or musical instrument when they blew through it. And you actually tried hard that and you couldn't really get much of a sound through it. But what they've done replicas of this horn, right? And with great skill, there is a way how to blow through it, like a didgeridoo. So we're getting an idea how people blew through these things. And the other one that we're going to look at that was placed on sale at Christie's auction, right, which gives details about this as well, is something we're going to go on to now, right? So that's where we're going to go next. So let's just do that. And we'll get something more out of this next one. So here we go. And there. Isn't that weird? Right, obviously it's very different, but it's more complete.
Yeah, it's got a
And
mouthpiece on that one.
It's got a bit of a, there's the mouthpiece there, and there's the
Yep.
stopper for the end.
Mhm.
So there's a mouthpiece, right? So it's slightly different, Pete. Yeah.
Yeah.
So interestingly enough, we'll keep that one there. We will keep that one there. And a side blow horn. And it says if we go with the chap, it says in terms of quality and condition, it's hard to beat. This went for sale at Christie's in 2021, in July 2021, and it's a bronze Irish horn, 3,000 euros bronze Irish horn. It's got some information, and that horn itself, this one, a single booming note between an A and an A flat, which has led some archaeologists to believe that it was used to transmit signals, perhaps alerting people to someone's arrival rather than to play musical tunes. Now, there's a word that we used last week, Anne, and it was the word entertainment. And as soon as we get to anywhere close to understanding entertainment in the Bronze Age, somebody suddenly turns around and says it can't be a musical instrument for entertainment. It's got to be for offering people's attention to transmit signals, which is even more interesting. Others have suggested that, given its conical shape, it may have played a role in bull worship. Well, we're going to leave that one out. So the length of this is 61.5 centimeters. So it's an interesting shape. And apparently, the last time one of these went for auction at Christie's was, in fact, this horn. This is the only horn ever to be sold at Christie's twice. This instrument, shape and form, is something that's seen in mainland Europe probably about 4,000 years ago. And the shape and form manages to get to Ireland roughly about 3,000 years ago. Its opening is decorated with a series of incised geometric patterns and bosses. At the opposite end are two bronze rings that were perhaps used to tie it to its owner. So there you go. You've got on this end, you've got decoration. Right, there we go. Typical chevron, it looks like pottery and so on, typical sort of designs for the Bronze Age. And there you've almost got, this actually looks like something from the 1700s. It really does. It doesn't look like from that date, but obviously it is. It requires a great amount of skill to play, right? But it's played very similarly, some say, to like the didgeridoo. And there are people using these instruments to be seen as musical instruments and not sort of, messenger things, right? Actually, what you can see on YouTube, because when I've actually got my horn behind me. You know what's coming. Hang on. When you think of a normal bugle, right? When you go, that's not a musical instrument, right? But that is to that when you're in battle. So sorry, I was out of tune. But you're basically using this on a battlefield to give commands and orders, right? But this could probably be used as a musical instrument, and that's the thing. And there's actually people using these on YouTube. So I'll leave that for you to look. So little is known about the everyday lives of people from the Bronze Age, as we know, but I believe that there's a lot more to these people than meets the eye. And it goes to say about this object, a small number of surviving gold artifacts suggest that there was a social hierarchy. We've just been talking about that. While excavated trumpets, pipes, and rattles indicate music was a part of their culture, and why not? This period in Ireland, the Bronze Age, is characteristic by the development of new sophisticated metal working techniques. And I think we've underestimated that in that sense that we don't. I know this is the Bronze Age, and I know I keep banding on about bronze, and how important it is, but we're not. I'm not really focused on saying, metalworking techniques, the skill of metalworking. We've not banged that enough. And yes, when we think about it, initially the bronze was poured into molds. We've mentioned that to create axes and daggers. Later sheets of bronze were beaten into cauldrons. David, it's gonna come one day. And horns. So when you consider its age, back to this object and what it might have been used for, it really is a fascinating object. And interesting enough, the present example is one of the finest still in private hands. It was first recorded in 1830. It's gone down the family, and it's been ended up in Christie's twice. Just 2 points as well. Today, around 100 Bronze Age Irish horns are known to exist. 100, not 3 or 4, 100 Bronze Age horns, right? And why do they still survive in such state? Most of these were excavated from peat bogs, where they might have been hidden for safekeeping. Oh, not more of this. Or buried as part of a ritual. No! And now reside in different museums. And there's one at the Pitt Rivers Museum in London, in Oxford as well. And again, obviously, because they've been right. I'm going to say this right. When you find things in peat bogs, naturally they're much better preserved than anywhere else, right? If they're going to be on land, they're going to be flattened and destroyed and whatever, right? I don't think 100 of them being found in peat bogs is significant to say anything, right? Simply because when you think about Ireland, there's lots of peat bogs, and why not? They're accidentally found, but anyway, I'll just leave that there. When you consider its age, what it might have been used for, its history, and how little we know about the ancient society that made it, it really is a fascinating object, and we'll do that. This horn isn't one of the largest ever found, but in terms of quality and condition, it's hard to beat. We're loving it. So it's been at Christie's twice. So amazingly enough, we're not. This time last week we'd finished, but we're not going to finish yet because I did say that we were going to come up with some kind of an answer, right? And some kind of an answer with these hoards, right? And we've discussed a lot of this anyway, but we're going to chuck it in there anyway. So we've done the hoards bit now, and I'm just going to double check. We've got 2 things left, right? So this comes from the magic of current archaeology, from a piece known as mathematically modeling Bronze Age hoards. Why do they bury lots of hoards in the Bronze Age? Please give me an answer. Well, we might have some kind of an answer to something. So a late Bronze Age hoard from Surrey, a new project using mathematical modeling, has determined that hoards such as this one, in which the majority of objects appear to have been deliberately broken, are likely to have been more functional in purpose than ritualistic. So when we talk about mathematical modeling, right, it's a process where we put up lots of reasons and whatever, and we look at the probability of the numbers and we calculate mathematical modeling. There has been a long-standing debate among archaeologists over the purpose of Bronze Age hoards. Okay, we've been discussing that, particularly those including objects that appear to have been deliberately broken. Now, Francis Pryor's got a lot to talk about broken objects, as you know, and maybe we'll come back to that again, but not today. Early theories suggest that they were purely functional. Right, okay. Right, okay. Purely functional. So the objects in the Bronze Age are purely functional, or the hoards are purely functional. So if we talk about that when we talk about the hoards, this is the point. It is talking about the hoards being purely functional. However, when you look at lots of objects in the Bronze Age, they don't look like they could have done much. Back to what I said, if you're cutting down a tree with a hollow axe, it's really not going to have much oomph. It's really not, right? I would prefer a solid bronze axe to cut down a tree, because it would have weight behind it, like you've got weight behind it with a hammer. Anyone who's banged a hammer will know exactly what I'm talking about, right? So the idea is functional, created either for temporary storage, recycling. Temporary storage, that's something that David was on about, right? Temporary storage. But instead of the temporary storage that we're going to go back for it, that conversation with David, that's where we're going to go with recycling, or for actual hoarding in times of strife. Well, what we did, that's not what Dave in that strife. We're going to bury it because there's a threat. We talked ourselves out of that. We went with a David thing. So more recently, though, many archaeologists have ascribed a more ritualistic meaning to their practice. I'm going to bite my tongue on this. Perhaps buried as religious offerings or as displays of social status. Until now, these ideas have mostly been based on descriptive analysis of hoards. A new study, however, addresses this debate using mathematical modeling. And a chap called Rob Wiseman from Oxford Archaeology created a model that describes groups formed through random accumulation of objects, as well as the outcome of randomly breaking objects into pieces. Okay. He then ran the model against the quantitative characteristics of 174 Bronze Age hoards discovered in England and Wales since 1995, all of which have been recorded through the Portable Antiquity Scheme. Right, okay, so fair enough. The results showed that the model was a good fit for 3/4 of the hoards, particularly those from the Late Bronze Age. So 3/4 of the hoards from the Late Bronze Age, they've worked out what's happening with them. This suggests that the majority were the result of unintentional formation and not through deliberate selection. So unintentional formation, interesting. Our friend Rob Wiseman also said, very wise man, Rob also used the model to estimate the accumulation rate needed to produce distribution of hoard sizes. The findings indicate that approximately 85 to 90% of all bronze objects in circulation during the Late Bronze Age would eventually have been broken and deposited in scrap hoards. I'm going to read this out and then I'm going to say what I think. This high rate suggests that they were likely to have been created for permanent disposal, as this would have quickly consumed Britain's entire supply of bronze. Instead, the results suggest a process of deposition and reuse, more likely serving a functional purpose than a ritualistic one. Now, first things first, right? I'm going to go with sort of most of that. This guy's been doing this mathematically. He knows more about me than all these things in the Bronze Age. But this figure that 85 to 95% of all bronze objects in circulation during the Late Bronze Age would eventually have been broken and deposited in scrap hoards. No. Whatever he's saying, I'm going to say no. And the reason I'm going to say no about that is just that there's a phenomenal amount of this stuff being buried. But surely we find a lot of these accidental as well, odd ones over there, here and there. I hear about that quite a lot, actually. So I can disagree with that. So Rob stresses that this model does not explain every type of hoard. Yeah, okay, fair enough. Only collections of broken scrap metal, like this one. And this is found in Surrey. There are other quite different hoards that the model does not explain, such as those of unbroken weapons or objects deposited in rivers and fens from causeway or in funerary context. Francis Pryor, Flag Fen. Nonetheless, the model does address the bulk of hoards found in the past 20 years and provides a new way of analysing groups of objects in the past. So that gives us some idea. But there's one thing he's saying, it's got a functional purpose to bury them, but it doesn't actually specifically say what that function is. But that gives us an idea, right? Somebody's done this, right? So I wanted to chuck that in there, right? And maybe when we have a little bit of discussion in a few moments' time, we can bring that to it. And finally, I sat here today and I thought, okay, what can I cap this off with? And maybe what I haven't done. What I haven't done is Orkney at all, really. Not for a while, and you know I love Orkney. And Peter, Kate Kate contacted me the other day. She said she'd been looking at going to Orkney, and I said why. And she said, well, she said she's going to fly up there, right, just to take advantage of me paying for her accommodation. She's going to have a shock when I book her into the most seediest hotel in Orkney that cost £20 just to take photographs from the Nessa Brodgar. But there you go. I know she's watching this. So anyway, finally, what I wanted to do is sort of, this is obviously a beaker pot from the early periods of you know, our copper age, roughly 4,500 years ago, and obviously this beakerist, we now know, we've already had a talk about this, that the skill, the idea of taking beaker pottery to Orkney has been discovered, and this very interesting object itself drags in a direct link with the continent, for example. And then the other thing, as we are doing this now, right, is the other images, right, and then we'll call it a day, right? Axes. Now those, my beauties, are late Bronze Age socketed axes found in Orkney. Found at a place known as Orfyr in 2006. Orfyr is where a chapel is, a round circular chapel that I went with Peter and the gang. Right, remember that round circular building? We had a photograph, and it was a Viking chapel. Well, that's known as Orfyr, and in that landscape around there, they found this. This is one of less than 20 examples of bronze metalwork found in Orkney to date. So we don't have many of these socketed axes in Orkney, but they do exist, right? They really do exist. Examples of Bronze Age metalwork in Orkney are notable by their scarcity. The mere handful, less than 20, we have are considered rare in Orkney, but in Britain, you know, there'd be loads of them, right? As we've already mentioned. The paucity of metal items in Orkney hints that they remained objects of prestige. What their presence confirms beyond doubt is that sections of the population remain part of the networks connecting the islands to the wider world, mainland Britain and further. Although copper can be found in Orkney, there is no indication it was mined, and only circumstantial evidence of Bronze Age metalworking in the islands to date. What few examples of metalwork we have in Orkney must have been brought to Orkney, we believe, except there's evidence of a little bit of metalworking. Throughout Bronze and Iron Age Europe, there is abundant evidence of prestigious items being deposited into watery places such as rivers, pools, and marshes. But we haven't really said much about that this evening. But these objects, the fact that most of Orkney's few examples of bronze work were recovered from peat bogs, suggests their value went beyond their material worth. They were perhaps held in high regard by their owners, maybe curated for prolonged periods of time, and therefore seen as fitting objects to be used as votive offerings. But for 20 items, we don't really know much more than that. On that note, we're going to call that a day. And I got to be honest with you, I had no idea. I thought I only had enough material tonight to keep us going up until 9 o'clock. But 1 hour later, I'm completely wrong as usual. I gotta say, right, I gotta say, folks, between you and me, when I'm preparing these lectures, I'm sitting down some days thinking I'm only going to be able to do this up until 9 o'clock, and we're going to finish early. And I've never managed to. I've never managed to run out of material. And we get some weeks where we get so much material, and I'm thinking, but that was only supposed to be for a 2-hour lecture. So it goes to prove how much stuff is out there and how much you can get. We haven't really had a massive amount of discussion tonight either. So here's your opportunity. We'll tell you what, we'll have Anne first, and then we'll have David. Anything, Anne, from you?
No, thank you very much. It's been, well, I don't know, been amazing. I do find so much of it amazing, that the skills that were around. Well, you know, when most people, well, before I was into this, and most people thought, early man was a bit thick, and yet you tend to find he's probably brighter than most people are today. And especially some of the skills are just staggering. And today's with the making of all the axe heads and the various things, but in metals. I mean, it really is amazing what they could do. And that necklace, I can't believe it. That's kind
I
of
can't either. I can't either. I can't. And much of the things that David would have used within his own professional life is things that have come down through the generations.
Yeah.
And we can all appreciate how skilled these people were. Thank you for that, Anne.
Yeah.
And talking about skilled people, David, anything from you?
No, thank you. Very interesting.
Many thanks, Dave. So,
Bye.
Night,
Bye,
Dave. See you
Dave.
next week.
Night, David.
I'm very tired. I'm going. Bye.
Oh, you're going
Bye,
as
Anne.
well. Night, Anne. Night, David.
Yeah.
Night, Anne.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Night, Anne. Night, Anne.
Yeah, good
Night. Night, Anne.
Good night.
Okay then. And Anne's not the only one who's tired. Right. So, anything from you, Peter?
No, not really. It was really good. A lot of it was used, obviously, in trade, and all those piles of scrap may well have been for recycling. Nothing to say they didn't recycle in those days, same as we do now.
But again, I think the last point that was one of the last points was being made is that might be one purpose, but in lots of other cases it's not. And like many things in prehistory, there's lots of different reasons for things. And I think as we're learning this now, I think, Peter, we've got to be very, very careful with other periods of history. For example, we look at a castle and we think that castle's built to subdue the people. It definitely, that's the reason. But the castle might be there for another reason. And it's like a Roman fort. Oh, obviously there's a Roman fort there because they want to show the thumb of Rome and control local people. It may have just been a trading outpost, or they may have done it as a practice thing, and there's no one there at all. To have a Roman fort at the top of Hard Knot, and you're thinking, but nobody lived there. It was full of trees. There was nobody. There's no point or reason for this thing. There's you can trade along the coast. It's just there, and you're thinking, okay, what are they exactly doing there? And you get different questions. You got to think of history in that way rather than having set pools of ideas that are so fixed and are so wrong. And you've got to go outside the box many times.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Right. Andy.
I was quite interested in those ones from Orkney, those two socketed axe heads you've got there, because they're a different shape to everybody else's. They are rounded in the cross section, whereas all the other ones are quite angular. And I wondered if that's because, as far as I'm aware, there isn't a lot of metal smelting going on in Orkney, but there is metal working, and that they were recycled, and that's why they're a slightly different shape.
So they've been recycled in the sense that they're a bit sort of they've been overused, and is that
no recycled as in they've been remade new from scrap.
Yes.
In a similar style,
but not the same, right?
Yeah.
I know, because you can see the loop there isn't as extreme as the other ones. Yeah,
and the main shaft of the axe blade there is rounded, as opposed to all the other ones are angular.
Yes, they are. It's more.
It might be a development. It's that's probably a more efficient shape, but.
More to it, but again, you know more than anyone, Andy, right? You're not going to be able to do much damage with something hollow.
Well, when you say hollow, it's only hollow at the end there, isn't it, where its socket goes in? The rest of it's solid. So it's not that inefficient, for small stuff. I mean, I wouldn't want to cut down a 20-foot, an 80-foot tree with it, but you could certainly take other stuff down and and use it for other working and crafting and building, So
maybe I've been completely unfair, and I apologise for that. But it's just, but for where I'm thinking, it just,
Yeah,
oh,
I've never
yeah.
tried using anything, and they're not very big, I have to say. So, or I've never seen a very big one. They're all, or usually about the same sort of small size, aren't you? They're all that fit into the palm of your hand. So,
Actually, I'm just going to see if I got my book. Yeah, hang on a minute. Where is it?
the other thing I was thinking of is
Yeah, carry on.
one of the other things we haven't considered with bronze hoards is maybe they weren't wanted anymore because iron took over.
Mm.
Yeah, but didn't one of the writers say that? And I'm just thinking, well, but they did want bronze still, Andy.
Oh, I think they'd still use it because you know, why not? You know, yes, it would be nice to have you know, I'd kind of like a Ferrari or whatever, but I probably won't have one, so I'll have my little Honda or whatever instead. You know.
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, Andy, you know, your Ferrari, I'm paying the bloody insurance. I'd go with the Honda every time. I'm sorry.
Have you paid insurance recently? It's all gone up.
Oh,
I've got to get mine sorted out. Actually, it's due in next week. So,
oh, yeah, I know.
I haven't got a car at the moment. So.
Oh, painful.
Yeah,
All right,
got scrapped big time last week.
Mm.
Did it?
Yeah, I had a couple of big holes in the bodywork, which were going to cost sort of 600 or 700 quid to fix at the back. And they said, come and have a look at it. And when I saw it, even next to the holes was all rotten, rusted metal. You'd have had to cut back further and further. And I thought, and it needed 4 new tires, and it was leaking oil, and it was blah 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 blah. I thought it's not worth it, and
It's not.
perfectly good car otherwise. But
Well, is it a Honda Civic?
no, this I've got my mum's Honda Civic at the moment. That was a Toyota Rav4.
Oh, right. Okay. So, right. Okay.
Which is supposed to last forever, except mine didn't. So.
Yeah, I tell you what, my wife it was 2000, and she wanted a new car, so we thought, right, we got 5 grand, you can have a new car. So she bought a new car, and this was 2000, right? So we bought a Kia Pride, not a Ford Ka, but a Kia Pride, right? It was an absolute tip after a year, the rust on it. And the reason why it was 5 grand was because it was crap.
Right.
The central axle went about 5 years later. And it for a car that was brand new 5 years ago, and we had it from new, it was absolutely rubbish.
That's very bad. Yeah.
So right, okay. So who's last? Adrena last but not least.
Mm-hmm.
Can you remind me how they did the handles for these axes? Because
it's in a mold. It's in a mold, 2-piece mold.
No, I would imagine it's a branch with a branch coming off.
Yeah, it's kind of a that shaped branch that then goes into the socket, and then they bind it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it might be that.
So basically, you've got a 2-piece mold, right? And you've got the pore hole here.
No, we're talking a bit of different things, Carl. We're talking about the handle, not the mold, not the head, the handle, the shaft.
The shaft. Oh, right. A bent bit of wood. Oh, right. Yeah.
Well, not necessarily bent.
No,
I was wondering that.
A branch with a twig, a bud.
Yeah.
A fairly thick twig coming off it.
Sorry, I went off on one.
They often show antlers. So you've got like an antler shaped like that, the main shaft there, and then that one chopped off about there with the axe head on it as well, which would give you a lot more spring and absorption in the using of it.
Yeah. Okay.
That would make sense. That would, and you could have a flat end and whatever going into the socket. Yeah.
It also showed like one thing. I think it was I don't know whether it was timed to an experimental one where they actually heated up the axe head and put it onto it, actually burnt onto it, and then cooled it quickly so that it was a really snug, tight fit, and then obviously bound it as well, which is what the lugs are for.
Yeah.
And you could use some resin in there as well.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
That would stick in quite well. and that would absorb some of the impact as well. Yeah, fair
Yeah.
enough. Maybe I wasn't fair about what I was saying.
It would be
earlier on.
nice to try it actually and see what happens. I'll have a
Yeah.
word with Claire and see if I can borrow hers. But hers won't be tempered. So
No. You, as long as you don't do it with police around, you know, when you're hunting your children through the streets, that's fine.
it's
Yeah,
experimental archaeology, honest officer.
I don't think social services will see it that way.
No, they've all gone anyway. The kids, they're all right. So they've run away.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Just the wife and the cat now.
Oh, what is your cat? My black and white cat is like, I don't know what's going.
Oh,
Yeah.
he comes in and out continually every time we have a lecture because I'm in here and that's where his food is. So he keeps coming in and out. So that's why I have to keep getting up to let him in and feed him and let him out and things. But he's not here now when you want to see him, of course. So.
Do you know? I was doing I've got a production that I had to do a self tape for yesterday, right? And I was doing really well. And I was doing the Welsh part of it, and I was doing this Welsh part of the audition. And then, as I'm getting into it, right, the cat jumps up on my bloody shoulder, right? I've got a white screen behind me and everything, and I'm thinking, this is not working. Just go. I'd done 100 takes of this thing, and it's just saying, you ruined it.
And that was the one. Yeah.
That was the one.
Yeah, it's annoying when that happens, isn't it? Yeah.
Do you know, the amounts of times I've been on productions and it's like, right, I say to the director, get me on the first go. All right, no, it's okay.
Yeah.
And somebody said, did you get that? No. And somebody said that was absolutely perfect. And we do it over and over again, never get it again. And I remember doing a TV series in London, and I was surprised. We did one take, and I went to see the director, and I said, right. She said, we're done. You can go now. I said, you know what? It was so perfect, the take.
Yeah.
But we could only do it once.
Yeah. I find it really funny because I used to, obviously you'd rehearse things and you'd do things and you maybe do it again and again and again. But every now and again you'd just get it and it would just be right. And it was right. There was like a sixth sense that everybody who was involved knew that was the one. So and you didn't have to do it again. Yeah.
It was perfect. When I look back at this, when I look back at this, it was like we did that once, and the director was so put out by the fact that I thought, oh, we're going to do it again. I said, no, we're not. It's done.
Anyway, good night, all.
Anyway,
good night,
Pete.
Hi.
Yeah, I'll head off too. So,
all right then. Okay,
thank you very much.
Say good night to Andy and Drina, and thanks for your support. And I sent the link over to you again, Andy. For
thank you very much. Okay, bye. Thanks. Good night. Good night, Drina. Thanks, Carl. Good night.
No, my pleasure. No night, folks. No night, Drina.
Good night. I'll get there in
We're
a
all
minute.
alone. We're all alone. Right. I don't know if anybody's out still online. I don't know. That was like, I don't know. It just flew by tonight. I didn't think I'd have enough material. I felt tired halfway through. I'm a bit sort of tired now, but not too much. And it was just like, I thought, whatever. Anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe. And I don't know if anyone's still out there. I don't know if anyone else is still in live chat. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, anyone who wants to send a donation over, you can send a donation over to PayPal, as you know. And I'll put the other link in there as well for anyone want to answer anything, can do now. If anyone wants to put a donation over, anything really is appreciated. And buy me a cup of coffee. We're still buying a coffee. And there we go. We got that there. See? And there we go. You can buy me a cup of coffee if you want, anybody. Right, we're going to call that a day now. I don't know if Lisa's out there still, or Mr. Wood and Stan Young and Black Patch's dog, or if you're not, or whatever. Anyway, if you are, anyway, thanks for your support tonight. That's been really appreciated. That's a blast. So we'll call it a day. Thank you very much. Just gonna look in the chat box. Nothing in the chat box. More. Oh yeah, I'm on tomorrow, Wednesday, which is 7:30. And in a day at thinking now, 11 o'clock. God, long day tomorrow as well. Do you know, I had some bloody money earlier on, and can I remember what I put it? There's a bloody banknotes. Oh, I had a banknote actually. I haven't seen any money for ages actually. One banknote. Don't know where it's gone. Sod it. Don't give me money. That's why you lose it somewhere. Anyway, na night folks. Diolch yn fawr chi. Gwelwch chi eto yn nos da. Diolch. Nos da. Na.